The Kithran Empire's fatal mistake. The morning shift aboard the research vessel. Aurora's dawn began like any other in the past 6 months. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge, watching the golden light of Kepler-42 paint the nearby planets in warm hues. Her ship had been cataloging the mineral wealth of this system's asteroid belt, part of humanity's ongoing expansion into the Outer Rim territories. Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from New Geneva Colony. Reported communications. Officer Jake Morrison, his voice carrying an unusual tension. Elena turned from the viewport, her dark eyes focusing on the young officer. Put it through, Jake. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the concerned face of Colony Administrator Rebecca Torres. Behind her, Elena could see the controlled chaos of an emergency operations center. Captain Vasquez, thank God we reached you. We've detected unknown ships entering our system. Large vessels, definitely not human design. Elena felt her stomach tighten. First contact with alien species was always handled by diplomatic corps, not research vessels. How many ships, Administrator Torres? 12 confirmed, possibly more. They're massive, Elena. Each one is easily 10 times the size of your research vessel. Torres paused, glancing at something off-screen. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies, but our computers can't translate the language. Dr. Marcus Chen, the ship's xenobiologist, looked up from his station. Captain, I'm detecting energy signatures consistent with weapons systems. High-yield plasma cannons, particle beam arrays. These aren't exploration vessels. Elena's training kicked in immediately. Jake, send an emergency transmission to Earth Command. Include all sensor data and our current position. Rebecca, begin immediate evacuation procedures for all 3 colonies. In your system? Captain, Dr. Chen interrupted, his voice brave. The alien ships have changed course. They're heading directly for New Geneva. The next few hours unfolded like a nightmare Elena would never forget. The alien vessels, sleek and predatory in design, approached the 3 human colonies with methodical precision. When Colony Administrator Torres attempted to establish peaceful communication, the response was swift and brutal. Elena watched in horror as the lead alien ship opened fire on New Geneva's orbital platform. The structure, home to 15,000 colonists, erupted in a ball of superheated plasma. The explosion was so bright it could be seen from the planet's surface. My God, whispered Jake Morrison, his face pale as he monitored the communications channels. They're not even trying to communicate. They're just ... destroying everything. The slaughter continued for 3 hours. New Geneva Colony, Haven Station, and the mining facility on Kepler 442c were reduced to glowing craters. Over 60,000 human beings died in the attack. Their only crime being in the wrong place when an alien empire decided to expand its territory. Elena ordered her ship to maximum stealth, using the asteroid field to mask their approach. The Aurora's dawn was equipped with advanced sensor arrays designed for geological surveys, but Elena repurposed them to study their attackers. I'm getting clear readings on their ship designs, Dr. Chen reported, his scientific curiosity overriding his shock. The hull composition suggests a silicon-based technology, probably from a high-gravity world. The energy output from their weapons is impressive, but relatively primitive. I'd estimate their technology level to be roughly equivalent to our military systems from about 50 years ago. Elena raised an eyebrow. 50 years behind us? Technologically, yes. But they have numbers, and they're clearly willing to use overwhelming force without warning. That's when the lead alien vessel broadcast its message to the system. The ship's computer managed a rough translation, and Elena felt her blood turn to ice as she listened. Primitive bipeds of the 3rd system, the alien voice was harsh, guttural, like rocks grinding together. I am War Prince Zarek of the Kithring Empire. Your species is weak, your colonies are destroyed, and your people are dead. We claim this system and all resources within it. Any remaining humans have 1 rotation of your planet to surrender unconditionally. or you will share the fate of your colonies. Alina looked around her bridge. Her crew of 12 researchers and explorers stared back at her, waiting for orders. These weren't soldiers, they were scientists. But they were also human, and they had just witnessed the cold-blooded murder of their people. Jake, did our emergency transmission reach Earth? Yes, Captain. Confirmed, received, and acknowledged. Response time for any kind of rescue mission would be at least 3 weeks, assuming they can spare military vessels. Elena nodded grimly. 3 weeks was far too long. If there were other human systems in this region, they would likely suffer the same fate as New Geneva. She made a decision that would change everything. Dr. Chen, I need you to compile everything. We know about these Kithran forces. Every sensor reading, every energy signature, everything. Include your analysis of their technology level. Captain, what are you planning? Elena's voice was steady, but her eyes held a dangerous glint. I'm planning to make sure Earth Command knows exactly what we're dealing with. And Marcus? Yes, Captain? Include a recommendation in your report. Tell them it's time to activate. The Prometheus protocols. Dr. Chen's face went pale. Like all senior members of Earth's scientific community, he knew about the Prometheus protocols, the classified project that had been running in absolute secrecy for over 2 centuries. The project that had produced technologies so advanced, so potentially dangerous, that they had been locked away and forgotten by all but a select few. Elena, are you sure? The Prometheus technologies have never been tested in actual combat. We don't even know if they work as theorized. 60,000 people are dead, Marcus. 3 entire colonies wiped out because some alien empire decided we look like easy prey. Elena's voice hardened. I think it's time they learned why humanity spent the last 200 years preparing for exactly this scenario. Meanwhile, aboard the Kithran flagship destroyer of worlds, War Prince Zarak basked in the satisfaction of another easy conquest. The bipedal species that called themselves humans had offered no resistance whatsoever. Their technology was laughably primitive, their defenses non-existent, and their military response time apparently measured in weeks rather than hours. Commander Thix, Zarak called to his second-in-command, a scarred veteran of dozens of successful evasions. What is our assessment of human military capability? Asterisk Commander Thix Crowlin consulted his tactical display. Minimal, War Prince. Their settlements were undefended, their communication systems are basic, and we've detected no signs of advanced weaponry. Based on the energy signatures from their destroyed facilities, I estimate their technology to be at least 5 centuries. Behind our own, Zarak's 4 eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Excellent. Deploy hunter squadrons to locate and destroy any remaining human settlements in this sector. The Empire has found another weak species to harvest for resources and slave labor. What neither Zarak nor his crew realized was that their communications were being monitored, not by Elia's research vessel, but by something far more sophisticated. Hidden throughout the galaxy, disguised as asteroids, derelict ships, and natural phenomena, humanity's true surveillance network had been watching and listening for over 2 centuries. On Earth, in a facility buried 3 kilometers beneath the Swiss Alps, alarms began to sound for the first time in 200 years. General Harrison Wells, director of Project Prometheus, stood before a wall of monitors showing tactical displays from across the galaxy. Confirm the activation codes, Wells ordered. Codes confirmed, General. The Kepler 442 incident matches all criteria for Protocol 7 activation. Wells nodded grimly. Protocol 7. Unprovoked attack on human civilians by hostile alien force. It was the scenario they had hoped would never occur, but had spent centuries preparing for. Send the activation signal to all Prometheus assets. Full deployment authorization. And wake up Admiral Chen. Across the galaxy, things that had slept in the void for 2 centuries began to stir. Massive structures that had been disguised as asteroids started to unfold, revealing themselves to be ships of impossible design. Weapons platforms hidden in the cores of dead planets activated their power systems. And in the deepest vaults of Earth, technologies that pushed the boundaries of physics itself were prepared for their first real test. The Kithra Empire had made two fatal assumptions. First, they believed that a species' current visible technology represented their full capabilities. Second, they assumed that a peaceful, exploratory people would be weak in war. They were about to learn why both assumptions were catastrophically wrong. In the depths of space, Admiral Sarah Chen opened her eyes for the first time in 50 years. The cryogenic suspension had preserved her perfectly, along with 10,000 other volunteers who had agreed to serve as humanity's ultimate guardians. Around her, the bridge of the Prometheus Unbound came to life, systems that had been dormant for 2 centuries beginning their activation sequences. "Status report," she commanded, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Admiral, we have confirmed hostile action against human colonies. Multiple civilian casualties." "Prometheus? Protocol 7 is now active." Sarah Chun nodded, feeling the weight of 2 centuries of preparation settling on her shoulders. Humanity had spent generations developing technologies they hoped never to use, building weapons they prayed would remain forever hidden, and training for a war they desperately wanted to avoid. But when faced with the systematic murder of their people, they would show the galaxy why humans had once been feared above all other species, and why that fear had been carefully forgotten until now. The Kithra Empire thought they had encountered a weak, primitive species ripe for conquest. They were about to meet the descendants of the beings who had once brought order to a chaotic galaxy through strength alone, then chosen to step back and let others believe they were harmless. That time was over. When the galaxy remembered why humans were feared, War Prince Zarok was reviewing casualty reports from his latest conquest, when reality itself seemed to tear apart around his flagship. One moment, the destroyer of worlds was cruising through empty space, savoring victory over the primitive humans. The next, 12 ships materialized around them as if they had simply decided to exist. Commander Thix. Zarek roared, his 4 eyes fixed on the tactical display that made no sense. "Where do these ships come from?" Commander Thix Krellin stared at his instruments in disbelief. "War Prince, our sensors show no warp signatures, no hyperspace distortions, nothing." These vessels appeared instantaneously, as if they had always been there. The human ships were unlike anything in the Kithran database. They seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, their hulls reflecting starlight in patterns that hurt to look at directly. They moved with an organic grace that defied conventional physics, occasionally seeming to flicker out of existence before reappearing elsewhere. "Energy readings, Commander?" Zarek demanded, though his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. That's impossible, War Prince. The readings are off our scales. Whatever power source these ships are using, it's beyond our understanding." Aboard the lead human vessel, Admiral Sarah Chen stood on a bridge that existed in 11 dimensions. Simultaneously, the Prometheus technology had advanced far beyond simple 3-dimensional space, allowing her ships to operate partially outside normal reality. It gave them capabilities that would seem like magic to species still bound by conventional physics. "Admiral," reported her tactical officer, whose consciousness was linked directly to the ship's quantum computers. "We have confirmed identification of the hostile vessels. Kithran Empire, classification, aggressive expansionist. Confirmed responsible for the massacre at New Geneva, Haven Station, and Mining Complex 7. Sarah's expression remained calm, but those who knew her could see the cold fury in her eyes. "Open a channel to the Kithran flagship." War Prince Zarok's screen activated without his crew initiating contact, another impossibility that made his scales itch with unease. The being that appeared was clearly human, bipedal, soft-skinned, fragile-looking. But her eyes held depths that made ancient predators seem tame. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Consortium," she said, her voice carrying impossible harmonics that seemed to resonate in the bones of every being who heard it. "You have committed acts of unprovoked aggression against human colonies, resulting in the deaths of 60,000 civilians. Zarek recovered some of his bluster. Human, you face the might of the Kithran Empire. We have conquered 800 worlds. Your primitive species cannot be silent. The words carried such absolute authority that Zarek found himself unable to speak, his throat constricting as if reality itself refused to let him continue. You will now experience the consequences of your actions, Admiral Chen continued. But first you will understand what you have awakened. The space around the Kithran fleet began to change. Stars dimmed and brightened in patterns that spelled out messages in a script older than most civilizations. Gravity wells appeared and disappeared, creating tide forces that strained even the reinforced hulls of the Kithran warships. 2,000 years ago, Admiral Shen's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. Humanity was known throughout this galaxy as the Shepherds. We brought order to chaos, ended wars that had raged for millennia, and established the peace that you have grown comfortable with. We were feared, respected, and ultimately burdensome to those who wished to rule through strength alone. Commander Thix was frantically checking historical databases, his claws clicking against holographic interfaces. War Prince, he whispered urgently. I am finding references. Ancient texts. Something about the quiet ones who chose to sleep. So others might lead. So we made a choice, Admiral Chen continued, seemingly aware of their research despite the impossibility. We withdrew. We hid our capabilities. We let the galaxy believe we had become weak, peaceful, harmless. We became gardeners instead of shepherds, scientists instead of warriors, explorers instead of conquerors. The human ships began to move. In formations that created geometric patterns in space, each movement precise beyond measure. As they moved, the fabric of space-time itself seemed to bend around them. For 2 millennia, we have watched species rise and fall. We have seen empires born and die. We have allowed others to believe they were the strongest, the most advanced, the most dangerous. And when peaceful species were threatened, we found ways to help them that left no trace of our involvement. On his tactical display, Zarek watched, in growing horror as more human ships appeared. Not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands. They materialized throughout the system, emerging from dimensions that his sensors couldn't even detect. But you, Admiral Chen's voice turned colder than the void between stars. You chose to murder children. You destroyed civilian settlements. You killed people who had never raised a weapon against anyone. You have reminded us why we once ruled this galaxy through strength, and why some species must be taught the consequences of their actions. The demonstration began gently. A single human ship, no larger than a Kithran frigate, approached the mighty dreadnought Fist of Conquest. The Kithran vessel opened fire with everything it had. Particle beams, plasma cannons, kinetic projectiles, moving at significant fractions of light speed. The human ship didn't dodge. It didn't raise shields. The weapons simply ceased to exist, as they approached, unraveling at the quantum level as if they had never been fired. Impossible, breathed Commander Thix. Nothing can simply unmake energy like that. The human ship extended what looked like a simple probe toward the dreadnought. When it made contact, the massive Kithran vessel began to change. Its hull plating rearranged itself into new configurations. Its weapon systems transformed into communication arrays. Its engine core reconfigured to produce flowers, actual living flowers that bloomed in the vacuum of space. Your dreadnought is now a garden, Admiral Chen observed. Its crew is unharmed, but they will spend their time tending growing things instead of destroying them. This is what we call a gentle lesson. War Prince Zarek found his voice returning. What are you? We are the species that develop technology you cannot comprehend because we have longer to develop it than you know. We are the beings who chose peace over power, exploration over domination, growth over stagnation. We are humanity, and you have awakened us from a sleep we had hoped would last forever. Asterisk across the system, the true scope of human capability revealed itself. ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, weapons that could rewrite the fundamental forces of physics, technology that operated by manipulating the basic equations that governed reality itself. A Kithran battlecruiser tried to flee, engaging its fastest hyperdrive. It found itself back where it started, as if space itself had become a closed loop. Another attempted to hide behind an asteroid, only to discover that the asteroid was actually a human vessel that had been disguising itself as a rock for the past century. The ancient records, Commander Thix was reading frantically from historical databases. They speak of a species that could bend the very laws of nature to their will. They called them the Quiet Guardians, and those who chose to step back from the throne of the galaxy. Admiral Cheen nodded approvingly. Some of your historians were more observant than your generals? Yes, we once ruled this galaxy. Not through conquest, but through necessity. We ended the chaos wars that had raged for 10,000 years. We stopped the extinction of hundreds of species. We brought peace to a galaxy that had never known it. She paused, and when she continued, her voice carried the weight of millennia. And when that peace was established, when other species had learned to cooperate instead of constantly warring, we chose to step back. We let others believe they had surpassed us. We became researchers, explorers, the harmless humans who asked for little and bothered no one. The space around the Kithran fleet began to fill with impossible structures. Cities that existed. Folded space. Gardens that grew in the hearts of stars. Art installations that used entire solar systems as their canvas. This is what we have been doing while you thought we were primitive, Admiral Chen explained. We have been building things that most species couldn't even imagine, let alone create. We have been growing, learning, becoming more than we were, not in pursuit of power over others, but in pursuit of understanding itself. War Prince Zarak was beginning to understand the magnitude of his error. The colonies we destroyed. You could have protected them, and we could have, Admiral Chen agreed. We could have stopped your attack before it began. We could have detected your fleet weeks before it arrived. We could have prevented every death. Her voice hardened. But we chose not to interfere until you had committed an act so heinous that it required a response. Why? Zarak asked, though he dreaded the answer. Because the galaxy needed to remember. Other species have grown aggressive, believing that. Humanity's apparent weakness makes us safe to ignore or exploit. Pirates attack our trade vessels. Slavers raid our outer colonies. Expansionist empires like yours eye our territory with hunger. It was time for a reminder of why the oldest rule in the galaxy used to be, do not anger the humans. The human ships began to move in perfect synchronization. Their formations creating patterns that generated gravitational waves in mathematical sequences. The waves carried a message broadcast across the galaxy in a code that every advanced species would recognize. The message was simple. Humanity has awakened. The age of assuming we are weak is over. Those who harm our people will face consequences beyond their imagination. Those who seek peace will find us as we have always been. Curious, helpful, and kind. Choose wisely. Throughout the galaxy, species that had grown comfortable with human docility suddenly remembered old stories. Ancient warnings and historical records they had dismissed as myth. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Trade routes shifted overnight. Military strategists began frantically reassessing everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. On the bridge of the Destroyer of Worlds, War Prince Zarak made what might have been the wisest decision of his career. Admiral Chen, he said formally, the Kithran Empire wishes to discuss terms for reparations. Reparations are insufficient, Admiral Chen replied. Your empire will cease all aggressive expansion immediately. You will return territory taken from peaceful species over the past century. You will transform your war fleets into exploration and aid vessels. And you, personally, will spend the remainder of your natural life working to undo the damage you have caused. And if we refuse, Admiral Chun smiled. and Zarek realized that the expression was far more terrifying than any threat. Then you will discover that everything you have seen today was us being gentle. You killed 60,000 of our people, War Prince. We have been extraordinarily merciful in our response. As if to emphasize the point, one of the human ships casually reached into hyperspace and pulled out a Kithran dreadnought that had been hiding 3 star systems away. The massive vessel appeared in local space, upside down and spinning slowly, its crew unharmed but thoroughly convinced that resistance was futile. "We accept your terms," Zarek said quickly. "Excellent. Commander Thix Kralin will serve as our liaison during the transition. He has demonstrated intelligence and adaptability, qualities that will serve him well in his species' new role as builders rather than destroyers." As the human fleet began to fade back into whatever dimensions they inhabited, Admiral Chen delivered one final message. "Let this be known throughout the galaxy. Humanity has returned to active guardianship. We will not conquest, we will not rule, but we will protect the innocent and punish those who harm them. The age of believing humans are weak has ended. The age of mutual respect and cooperation begins now." In the aftermath, as the Kithran fleet limped home to begin the process of transforming their empire from conquerors to builders, Commander Thix found himself reflecting on the day's events. "War Prince," he said quietly, "I believe we have just witnessed the return of the galaxy's true apex species." Zarek nodded grimly. "And we're fortunate they chose mercy over justice. Though I suspect the two may be the same thing from their perspective." Across the galaxy, humanity settled back into their role as the quiet guardians they had always been. But now everyone knew they were watching, and everyone remembered why the oldest rule in the galaxy had once been simple: do not mess with. The humans thought the age of humanity's deliberate obscurity was over. The age of earned respect had begun. Asterisk.